Welcome back. It's now time for us to apply those concepts we've learned in solving linear equations in one variable in solving these age problems. In solving word problems that are specifically age problems, we just need to understand how age works. Now, if we talk about my age right now, it is actually dependent into two other time frames. If you talk about my age at present, that is one time frame that you can think of. But it is in one way or another related to two other time frames. And what are those time frames? You have the past time frame and the future time frame. So if we talk about age problems, we need to consider that before we proceed in solving these problems, the same steps will be followed in the abbreviation of the word action, which is presented in our module. A stands for giving the details on the situation. C is on giving representations. T is on translation. I, implementation or the solving process. O, if there are more than one things that are asked, so you need to proceed to the next. And then you have here N, neutralization or checking back. We are going to use this specific step still for us to be guided, but we need to understand again, more importantly, the time frames so that when we are going to translate later on, it's easier for us to do that. This consideration of time frames is very much important for step C, which is on giving representations. Let me put this this way. My age right now, say for example, is 30. My age 5 years ago is 25. Looking at that specific concept, from my present age, which is 30, moving to my age 5 years ago, I subtracted 5 from 30 to get 25. In short, when you are moving from your present age to the age years ago, you are going to subtract a specific number of years. When going back to the last time frame, which is the future, if I am 30 years old right now, in 10 years or 10 years from now, I will be 40. Considering that specific concept between present and the future, by moving towards the future, you are adding a specific number of years. Just like when I have 30 and in 10 years I will become 40, I just simply added 10 to 30 to get 40. So with this concept in mind, take note that when you are going backwards, you are to subtract, but you're going forward, you're going to add. And this is also the reason why it's easier for us to give the simplest representation of the symbols or the variables, specifically x, to the age at present. Because if my age at present is simply X, 5 years ago, I'm just going to subtract 5. So if I'm X right now, 5 years ago, I am X minus 5 years old. Going forward, if I am X right now, in 10 years, I will be X plus 10. I only added 10 to my present age, which is X. Let's proceed to number one. We have here two different individuals. We have John and Paul. And it tells us that John is 5 years older than Paul. So if we talk about our first step, which is an abridging, you have here two different persons. Okay, let me have it like this. Two persons. Okay? Aside from detailing that there are two different persons, we also need to understand how many time frames are being entertained in this situation so that later on it's easier for us to give representations to them. Looking for, if we talk about 5 years older than Paul, that is without any hint to age or without any hint to the past or towards the future. That's automatically present. So the first time frame is present. That's also the concern right now. That how old are they now? So we have this time frame of present. Are there any other time frames in this situation? Let's read forward. In 15 years, the sum of their ages will be 95. The next time frame that is actually being considered here is the future in 15 years. So aside from two persons, you also have two time frames. Time frames. We need to consider time frames as part of the given so that we could actually have an ease in representation. We are going to give the simplest representation or of the variable, or as we all know as x, to the younger person. So John, and we have here Paul. So we are going to give that value of the variable to either John or Paul, to whoever is younger than the other. Looking at the situation, John is 5 years older than Paul. So who is younger than the other? The younger one in this situation is Paul. So we are going to give to Paul. But before we proceed with that, let's also consider the movement of my age I have presented earlier. When I move backwards and forward, it's easier for us to look at the present. So in simpler sense, we are going to give the simplest form of the variable x to the younger person at present. So again, younger person at present. So the younger person, you have here Paul. So we have this situation. Let X be Paul's present age. So we are giving X to Paul's present age. Do we have other age for Paul? Yes, because in the given situation, we have entertained in 15 years. As I have mentioned in the first step, there are two persons and two time frames. So each person has two ages here. His age at the present and in 15 years. So again, this representation, or the assignment rather, of the simplest variable x will be given to the younger person at present. Okay? With this situation here, the other method that could make age problems easier is by making a table. So let us make here a table. Okay. So I am here making a table so that we could represent not just Paul's present, but also his age in the future, as well as the other person, John. So we have here, so pardon if it's not that straight. So I have here and here as well. So this table here, you're going to place here the person in this column, the persons given in the situation. Take note that there are two rows because there are two persons given here. So it is actually Paul or John. Now, if you would like to have John first, it doesn't matter who will be written first as long as you know who will be having the simplest representation. For this rows here at the top, this would correspond to your time frame. So if I'm going to have it like that, this is where your time frame will be. So let me make it better. So here is here is the person. And for the row, you will have here the time frame. And what are those two time frames? Your first time frame here, and the thing that you're concerned about is your present, okay? And you will have here the future, specifically in 15 years. This is your next time frame, or you could also label this as future, but I am just labeling it in 15 years so that this will be a help for us to assign values later on. Take note, we are still in step 2 or step C, conceding. Now we have given X to Paul, so we are going to have that representation. Paul at present will be having X. Before we proceed to the correct translation, we need to fill in this table properly. So how do we fill in this table? Looking at the present age of John, let's look at this relationship here or statement here. John is 5 years older than Paul. So if Paul is X, how old is John? Is in the form of in symbol. So if Paul is X, how old is John in symbols? Let's put it this way. If you are 14 years old right now and you do have a sibling who is 5 years older than you, your sibling will become 19. That is if you're 14. How do we get 19 if you are 14 in this situation? To get 19, we simply added 5. So if Paul is X, John's age at present, since he is 5 years older than Paul, he is actually X plus 5. Meaning, whatever the value of X here, let's say 2, 2 plus 5, 7. So 7 is 5 more than 2. If this is 11, and John will become 16, and 16 is 5 more than 11. That's really correct. Aside from the present ages, let's proceed to the future. By the way, I am incorrect here. This is actually I. Yeah. Or let us change the color to green in 15 years. All right. So as we move to 15 years, let's just think about my example earlier. If I am 30 years old at present, in 10 years, I will be 40. Or in 15 years, I will be 45 years old. If you are 14 years old right now, how old will you be in 15 years? You will be 29 years old. If my eldest son, B-Boy, is 4 right now, in 15 years, he will be 19. Now, looking at those examples, me 30 to 45, you 14 to 29, and my eldest son, B-Boy, 4 to 19, we simply added 15 in what would be our ages. But since Paul here is not an exact value, it's X, it's in symbols, what should be Paul's age in 15 years? Similar concept, we are just going to add 15. So if Paul is X right now, in 15 years, Paul will be X plus 15. Looking at John's age in 15 years, we don't know what it is, but we have represented it earlier as X plus 5. In 15 years, we are just also going to add 15. So his age will become X plus 5 plus 15, which is actually could be simplified further into X equals X plus 20. So in John's situation, it's not 15 years it's being added, okay? Because in the first place, his present age is X plus 5 with its relationship to Paul's age. So that's why it's X plus 20. Now that we have completed this table, let's proceed to its translation. How do we translate it? Let's look at the specific situation here, the other statement given. Let me copy this here. In 15 years, the sum of their ages will be 95. Was 95. Here is 95. So this is the statement that we are going to use in our translation. And here is the critical thing. When we translate, we may not be able to use all the representation in this table, but with this table here, we could be guided on what time frames are we going to use, or what time frame rather. Now, in this situation, in 15 years, it's very clear that this statement here is talking about 15 years from now. So think about what will happen to Paul and to John in 15 years. In short, our um, in short, the column that we are going to focus more is not this column here, but the column in 15 years. So I'm going to highlight this so that you would know that in our translation, we are going to use the representation in this column. not included x, including x, not including 5, because this is where the statement falls in 15 years. So the sum of their ages will be 95. Whose age? Whose age are we adding? Of course, Paul and John. So in 15 years, we are going to add their ages. And what is now the age of Paul? Do you say X? The answer is no, because X is Paul's present age. But here it's highlighted that we are going to use their ages, Paul's and John's, in 15 years. So the sum of their ages will be 95. We will use these symbols here. So instead of X and X plus 5, what we are going to use are the values X plus 15 for Paul. This is Paul plus John's age, which is X, plus 20, and their sum will be 95. Take note that the use of will be, it's the future tense of the be verb, which also includes is, and we all know that is the keyword for equality. That's why we have here equal sign. Again, before we go to implementation, let me repeat. Why is it that we use the symbols? Because it's very clear in this statement that we have in 15 years. So we are going to use this notations here, not this one. But either way, we are going to use this still later as we proceed to our overplaying, since we are asked about their age at the present. So with this, let's continue in our step I. In step I, we are going to solve the equation. So you will have here x plus x, you will have the 2x, and then 15 plus 20, you will have 35, which is equal to 95. And then subtract both sides by 35. By the way, this step is already a combination of this, so please be guided with the addition of integers and algebraic expressions. So we will have here 2x is equal to 95 minus 35 is 60, and divide to both sides. The value for your x is 30. And what does this 30 stands for? Looking at the situation, looking at our table, looking at step C, the first statement, we all know that this is actually Paul's present age. Okay? It's not Paul's age in 15 years. It's not John's age, nor John's age 15 years. It's simply Paul's present age as they use here in this representation. And since this is what is part of what is asked, how old are they now? So this is already one half of our concern. Now let's overplay it. Since we are asked about the next, we are asked about their age at present. Paul's present is already here. So we are going to look at John's present age. What is the representation of John's present age? Is it x plus 5, x plus 15, or x plus 20? The answer is already here on our table, and it's actually x plus 5. So we have here the value, x being 30 plus 5, that's 30. The value is 35, and this age, or this value rather, is John's present age. This now completes our computation part. When I say computation part, only for solving portion, since we still have to check it. And how do we check it? We are going to neutralize this by looking at the situation that their age, here in translation, their age in 15 years will be 95. So again, their age in 15 years will be 95. In short, we are adding here, basically, let me use this color, Paul's age in 15 years. Okay, that's the first thing that we are going to consider. Paul's age plus John's age in 15 years. 15 If we are going to add Paul's and John's age in 15 years, it must be 95 in the given situation. So if Paul's age in 15 years, we have here this representation, x plus 15. So if this is the value, if the x is 30, how old will Paul be in 15 years? Simply add 30 plus 15. Paul's age in 15 years is 45. John's age at present is 35. In 15 years, we simply add by 15 to get the value of 50. Or you could use here x plus 20, and x is 30 plus 20, you will have 50. In checking, let's use this and see if it sums up to 95. You will have here Paul's age in 15 years, that's x plus 15 as given earlier, plus John's age is x plus 20. Sorry, it must be 90. No question mark yet since we have not substituted any value for the variable. Here comes the next. You have here, this is 45 as a whole, plus as a whole, this is 50. So now question mark will be written as 90. Even if it's too obvious, just simply continue. Sorry, it's not 90. My bad. Let me erase this one. It was actually 95. In here, 95 as well. So 45 plus 50 is 95. The other side is also 95. Now that we have checked and made sure that both sides are correct, are equal rather, it means that the present age of John and Paul is are these values. To simply end this with a statement, you may also use this one. Uh, they How do we state it like this? Because there are two of them. At present, you can say you say that at present, Paul is 30 years old. The symbol for years old, the y slash o, while John is 35 y slash o. This is the statement that may summarize this problem. So this is the answer for number one. Again, how did we solve this? Looking at the number of persons and number of time frames, so that we will be guided later on as we move to step C, which is on translation. But we first give the simplest form of the variable to the younger person, or youngest if there are more than two, at present, so that when we move to past and future, it's easier for us to do that. Complete the table, add this table, and then translate using the statement given the situation, solve it, and check to have your final decision.